Hello, and welcome back to the NoScore Review Show. I'm your host, Nick Green, and today joining me is Scott Milne once again. Scott, welcome back to the show.
Yo, what's up, everybody?
And we also have a new guest to the show. Kelly Service is making his appearance on the NoScore Review Show. Kelly, welcome.
Hello. How's it going?
Today, we are talking about Resident Evil 4 Remake, the latest entry, I guess, in the Resident Evil franchise, as it were, or re-entry, I guess. We all got our hands on this game. We'll probably be talking a little bit about Resident Evil 4 proper, the original. I haven't actually played that one. This is my first foray into RE4, as it were. I've heard tons about like this actually kind of feeling like a completely different game compared to the original. They seem to have built upon and changed a few things and added stuff as well. This review will also be spoiler free for the first little bit. We'll get into our kind of general thoughts for the first few minutes, what our expectations were going in, and then there will be an explicit spoiler warning for when we get into our highlights and lowlights. Without further ado, we're going to jump into our general thoughts. Scott, do you want to kick things off?
So I know you have myself and Kelly here today, but where did everybody else go? Bingo?
Should I add the CSI? There we go. No, what? Come on. No, I'm the odd
Sorry,
one
I don't know if I beat you to that or not, Kelly. But
I just had him on my desk.
Yeah, so
he's always ready.
Yeah.
Yep,
oh
always.
My god.
It was absolutely fantastic coming back to this. I myself did play the original 2005 game. I played the PS2 version, but I have actually played a little bit of like that old Wii version as well, which that in itself was like a whole different experience too. But I think, just my first general overall thoughts was that this was definitely like the remake game of the year. So
sure.
I think in terms of remakes, like it's so far just this and Dead Space, which I haven't touched yet. But even from what I've heard, this kind of just blows it out of the water.
Right. Yeah, I think when you're comparing the likes of Dead Space Remake and this one side by side, Dead Space Remake is definitely more in the line of honoring the original and basically not touching most of the DNA of the original. There are a few things, like a few changes here and there when you're talking about Dead Space Remake. Like they added like full dialogue for Isaac, basically, compared to the first one. And then like the graphical overhauls. And then there's a few side quest missions here and there that they added. But RE4, like I said earlier, is like almost a completely different game. Like a lot of the boss fights are completely different. They like overhauled the story a bit more. So it has like, it's a bit more fleshed out and meaningful. Then there's just a whole schwack of things to do in this game that they built upon the first one. It's funny how like, did you ever play RE4 on like more modern consoles? Because they've like Skyrim'd the shit out of that game basically. Like it's on almost every platform, right? It's in VR now. It's on available on like modern consoles. It like got ported to most consoles, I think, or it like more on the Nintendo side maybe of things.
It's definitely Capcom's, golden calf, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Out of, like, especially like on the Resident Evil side, out of like everything that they know is going to bring them in sales, it's definitely going to be RE4. So
yeah, absolutely. Kelly, do you want to jump in with some of your general thoughts on the game?
Yeah, I liked it a lot. As somebody who really enjoys Resident Evil, I think Resident Evil 4 Remake is up there with like the top 3 like Resident Evils for sure. It definitely improved a lot on the original. There's some changes that are like that make sense. Like they stripped away a lot of like the goofy silliness stuff and made it like put it a little more straight. Which is, I don't know, it's kind of subjective whether or not you like that stuff.
Right.
But overall I did enjoy it a lot. I think it's a great addition to Resident Evil. as a franchise, for
I
sure.
think go ahead, Scott.
Oh, I was going to say, it really kind of feels like the culmination of everything that has been happening on the RE engine. For the
Sure.
Resident Evil games, I mean, starting with 7 and then jump into 2 Remake, 8, and then 3
Yeah.
Remake. It definitely feels like, okay, like we're taking like, you know, our most solid game, RE4, and we're incorporating all the lessons that we learned from like those games to like really deliver like the best possible kind of Resident Evil experience we can with this game.
Exactly. Yeah, they took everything that they kind of introduced with the newer entries of 7 and 8, and then the stuff they learned in the past 2 remakes, where they like really hit their stride with 2 remake, and then maybe had a few missteps in 3, and then they kind of just took everything that worked for the most part and put it into their golden egg, as you put it, Scott.
Yeah.
And I think it landed for the most part. It was hard going into this game not having high expectations, at least on my end. I had always heard that this is a lot of people's favorite game of all time. In a lot of people's like top 10 games of all time.
Yeah.
Um, so not having that prior experience and kind of coming in blind, as it were, uh, it set it up for high expectations a little bit on my end. And there were a few most I don't know that you could, or that most people go into these games for like compelling story and like amazing characters and whatnot. In terms of complex characters anyway, they're definitely memorable characters, but
Oh yeah.
there were a few things on the gameplay side that frustrated the hell out of me. So we'll get into that a little bit more when we go into the highlights and lowlights. But I think overall it stuck the landing for me. It also there's just so much in the game that I think it definitely warrants replayability. And it's definitely probably the most replayable out of the 3 remakes. I
Yeah.
also played 2 and 3 remake prior to this one for the first time this year,
Yeah.
just to kind of get ready for it. Um, so yeah, I think it's definitely the most revisitable, and I imagine some of the gripes I had for it will probably wear away with time, because it as with like any kind of game genre or series, like it could take some getting used to with the mechanics and how the game actually plays. Um, so, but yeah, we'll get into that a little bit more. Scott, Kelly, did you have any more things you want to touch on before we get into spoilers?
No, I think I'm good.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. Well, without further ado, this is your final spoiler warning for Resident Evil 4 Remake. If you don't want to know anything about the game going in, gameplay changes, story changes, anything at all, pause the video, go play the game for 20 hours and then come back. Or if you don't care about spoilers, then stick around. So, Kelly, what were some highlights and lowlights for you?
Uh, well, like you said, it is the most replayable of the remakes for sure. The least of which being Resident Evil 3, where
Yeah.
the amount of hours that I have in Resident Evil 4 is the same as like the 100% complete save that I have for Resident Evil 3. So that's pretty telling for how
Yeah.
much content there actually is in the game. And I'm not even done.
Totally.
Like I've only played through. I've done standard, hardcore, and professional, like once each. And I like,
Oh,
yeah,
nice.
and I
In
definitely could.
4 or 3?
4.
Wow. Okay.
Wow.
Yeah. So, well, I'm no, I'm not. I did a little cheaty run through professional. So, like, cause
Okay.
professional is
Okay.
way harder than the original for sure. The game is much more difficult.
Hmm.
Uh, this time around, and it's mostly due to like how the game's systems work, like how the
Hmm.
enemies like interact with you. There's less. I would say
Ooh.
there's less like math involved. It's messier, which
Okay.
it feels pretty good. But that's just the way
Feels
I
a little
see
more
it.
organically chaotic, maybe.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah, for sure.
Sure.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I've only done the one. I actually finished the my first playthrough yesterday. Um, And yeah, it already, like, it also rivals 2 Remake as well, right? Like when you play through the both campaigns, Leon and Claire, that's still more time just in RE4 alone. And that's not even taking into it, like, that's just the main story. That's not taking into account like all the shooting galleries and all the challenges and the, like, achievements, and then the different gameplay modes too, right? Like you did, Kelly.
Yeah.
Do you know off on the top of your head your hour count at the moment, roughly?
I could check. My hours total in Resident Evil 4 are 27.7 hours.
20. Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
So, because I think on mine, I think I'm at 20 hours first. So maybe I like really took my time with it. I don't know.
You definitely can. I like rushed through
Mm,
standard, I think.
Okay.
I definitely did not
gotcha.
like take as much time as I could have because there's a lot of stuff that I missed and I am
Mm.
gonna go back and like look for it
That
later.
that
So
treasure hunting, right?
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Like there's a
Yeah.
ton. So yeah.
Scott, did you want to jump in to your highlights and lowlights at all?
Oh, yeah, no, absolutely. So I guess this is where I can come in with like comparing like the old to the new, and just the mechanical upgrades they've done has made it a much more fluid experience.
Hmm.
Um, in the classic game, you had your briefcase, which, like, yes, you would keep everything in, you would like sort it how you had, but if you wanted to change guns, you had to go into that briefcase,
Ooh,
hit equip,
Yeah.
and go back.
yikes.
So that's where like they've definitely been benefiting from like the last couple of years. Yeah, Kelly.
Right.
Yeah.
And just being able to map stuff out to your D-pad there, so you can just do like on the fly.
Right.
So it's made it a much more fluid experience there. Because I think that's what made that old game really long to like play, especially like if you're just doing like a casual playthrough, because it's just like, well,
Sure.
my battles are now taking like 5 to 10 minutes because I have to like
Right.
on the fly do that. But definitely with making it a more fluid experience, where it's just like, cool, I'm going to like use my bolt thrower to like just quickly down this guy in the legs, rush and kick him, and then finish him off with just like a headshot. It's
Sure.
so much faster now. So
Hmm.
I've really enjoyed that.
Just taking some of the more modern gameplay mechanics that are like in a lot of games nowadays, the D-pad weapon
Yeah,
mapping,
yeah.
the like quick crafting of like ammo and stuff,
Oh
the
yeah.
parry ability. Was the parry ability in the original?
In the original, no, but your knife was a lot more overpowered. You basically had infinite knife. Unlike in
Yeah.
Oh,
this game
interesting.
where knife has durability, you just had one knife and you just did everything with it. So
Interesting. Okay.
yeah,
Yeah, so you would
Very
have
cool.
regenerators on the ground and you'd just be knifing them over and over, trying to kill them to save
yeah,
ammo because it was such a
yeah,
pain. Yeah.
Right.
yeah.
Cool. Yeah, and then like other things, there was like the auto sort system in the case too, right?
Oh
Was
man.
that?
Oh, that no, that
That
was not in the original. In the original was just
oh
like you pick up
that's the
something
best
and you
feature.
have like different little spots you had to go through and
There was
do it all
just an
yourself.
entire mini game of just a puzzle of sorting your case for like
Yeah.
half the playthrough in the original. Oh
Originally,
god.
I thought like maybe they would turn off auto sort on professional, and I was like, "Oh man, this like I don't know how I'm gonna survive. I can't just like press a button and have it be done. That would have been a nightmare."
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Even as someone who like does kind of enjoy like taking the time to do those types of like mini game puzzle things in games, and just
Hmm.
like organizing stuff, I still ended up just leaning on the auto sort thing because it's just like it just saves so much time. And like when you're in the middle of battle too and you're like trying to pick up ammo and stuff, but like
Yeah.
everything is all over the place and you have like a bunch of little 1 by 1 squares all over
Yeah.
your case, it's like I can't bother right now.
Yeah.
So little changes like that are for sure
Um,
welcome.
Also, on top of like adding into the shooting gallery and the rewards you get off of that, and the customizable briefcases, those definitely also added in a whole new level of, kind of like your ammo management and
Sure.
kind of really tailoring your play style. Those obviously weren't in the original, so having it where
Right.
it's just like, okay, I'm going to have it where like I'm going to be really relying more so on handgun ammo, or
Hmm.
making sure that more money drops for myself.
Yeah.
Uh, I feel like it also allows you to like where if you are taking your time, just like I kind of am doing that and going for like kind of as much of a 100% completionist I can do on my first playthrough. Having it so it's just like, cool, I'm unlocking everything that I can on my first go. Whereas in the original ones, and like if you're rushing through, it's just like you're more so planning on doing those multiple playthroughs. So
right, yeah. I because I had recorded my playthrough for my NoScore Plays channel, that definitely kind of like guided my playing experience a little bit. Like I didn't go into, had I just been playing the game on my own, non-recording, I probably would have been set back a bunch, because I would just sit in the shooting gallery until I got like S rank and 100%. But I only played, I think, maybe 3 of the however many locations they're in. It is nice that they carry over, though. Like you do have to like actually go down there and participate at least once, I think, before you can like progress to the higher tier challenges. But I do appreciate the fact that, like, just because you missed one back like a couple missions ago or whatever, you can keep like carrying on. That's a really great feature. Yeah, but otherwise, I think I pretty much explored the game as is. I don't think I'll tackle the like challenge modes, at least not anytime soon. I'll probably do like the 100%, like find all treasure and whatnot and get all upgrades and type things for future playthroughs. But I'm not particular, especially the hard time I had with the first playthrough. Well, we could kind of get into that a little bit more. Even like 2 and 3, I definitely had to like be a little bit patient with like my learning process for the gameplay experience. It's definitely a different type of like combat, as it were. But like the whole chaos of this game is like a stark contrast to the zombies that just stand around in Raccoon City and the RPD, right? It's a whole different beast. That first section, I don't know if it's entirely scripted, but that whole first village section, where all of the villagers end up chasing you around until the church bell goes off, that was like stress-inducing beyond belief.
So Nick, there was one thing I noticed and can recommend. Do you know how you can just quickly end that segment? You just kill the dude with the chainsaw. It's that easy, Forehead.
Oh, so. Seriously? Oh man, I think my anxiety was getting too high, and I was just doing zombie trains around the whole village until I could figure out what the hell to do.
There is a timer, but it's you kill the chainsaw guy and it shortens it. There's also a way you can skip the village sequence if you have the rifle already on a second playthrough. You can shoot the bell tower, the bell rings.
Nice.
Right.
Very cool.
Yeah. Yep. I think that was something that they had in the original one as well. Yeah,
I think so.
Because that was something they did have in the original game as well. I think it was like the first time they had that in a Resident Evil game as well, where you could come back on a new game plus with a whole bunch of unlocked guns and just cruise right through. Like have like your infinite rocket launcher as well. So
right, yeah. Oh yeah, that rocket launcher I didn't use the entire game. It was one of those gamer scenarios where it's like, give me something important and I never touch it the entire playthrough. Like I didn't even end up using it in the final boss battle because Ada just throws you another rocket launcher.
Free.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, a little bit, getting a bit more into this, and this whole segment just kind of goes with a huge asterisk above it of like, I imagine most of this might fade away with future playthroughs and getting more accustomed to the gameplay systems. But like, even just the my first like low light, I guess, the merchant dialogue, him like saying the little quippy one-liners like every time you switch through a menu, like the first few missions of dealing with that, I'm just like, information overload, man. I can't be bothered with this right now. It sent me into a spiraling rage. But like as missions went on, I finally got used to it after a while. The livestock in the village can go to hell because they absolutely fuck you over. Like that was honestly probably one of the most frustrating parts of my playthrough. Ashley just getting stuck on the cow in the shed and then the cow beating the shit out of her and then you get stuck on the cow. Oh my God, man. What a terrible thing to have to deal with while you're dealing with all of the zombified or like cultist villagers and the like zombie dogs and shit. Oh my God, that was awful. Were those in the original game too? The like
They had
mad cow?
livestock. I don't remember
Yeah.
if they like intentionally
I
attacked you or if it's like,
Yeah.
I don't know. Because I've been killed by that cow like on professional. I've been like running away and the cow just
Yeah,
like
man.
beelines it to
Oh,
me.
dude,
Yeah.
that was
Yep.
brutal. Another kind of general complaint I had was how they do the player animations and the speed of Leon versus the speed of the enemies. It's just
Yeah.
like it was a very huge hurdle to get over.
Yeah.
Because like you can get like gang rushed so many times where like a dude with a crossbow will like shoot you and then Leon will like stumble back and it'll take like 15
Yeah.
seconds and then three
Yeah.
villagers have swarmed you by the time he actually gets back up. That was just a very frustrating thing some of the time. Ashley, her AI could be a bit unforgiving sometimes. What's his name? The big cheese dude, the tall guy that injects you at the beginning. Like the section where just before his boss fight, like that little mini chase section, Ashley like wouldn't stick close to me, so then she would just get swarmed by a bunch of villagers, and then the dude would just pick her up and fuck off. That was pretty infuriating.
It's nice to see that, you know, despite everything and all the technical upgrades we've gone through in like the last 20 years, kind of Ashley AI has stayed the same.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
harkening
Where-
back to some of that really shit like companion follower AI that
Yeah.
you have to deal with in like those escort missions. It's pretty brutal.
which-
Most of the time she was good.
Yeah.
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 They made
I
her
mean,
better too. Like she used to
Oh,
have a health
no.
bar. So she had a health bar and you had to heal her.
yeah.
So you had to use your healing items on her.
What?
Like,
No
she had her
way,
own
dude.
health bar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely not.
It was so brutal. Like some of the sections in the original were like a nightmare. Like the going into the castle, like you know, the wheel like puzzle where you have to get the wheel and then get the stairs to come down. That part of the
Right.
game was like a infamous nightmare for people who have like played it. So
Oh god.
yeah.
Yeah, she would also like just not listen to those commands where like you'd get her to hold a crank wheel and then like you'd get her to do that and then you'd make your way to that timer door, but then she would like be right behind you by the time you get there and then it would close. That was another frustrating thing. Another couple of frustrating sections I had were the home defense with Luis. I think took me probably 4 or 5 tries at least. I had a hell of a time dealing with that. And I also never remembered that you could push the bookshelf in front of one of the windows instead of boarding it up. So like every time I restarted, I would board up that window and then be like, fuck, I could have just fucking pushed that thing in front.
Yeah.
So I kind of shot myself in the foot on that. But yeah, man, that section gets freaking hairy like towards the end, especially with the cow head guy with the hammer. That actually can pay off a little bit, and he can like take care of a lot of the villagers once he's inside if you like manage to dodge. The castle catapult section set me back a few times as well. I finally realized it wasn't completely random where they were shooting. It was a little more scripted of like as you progress, they're kind of shooting in front of you and around you. That was probably more so to do with like the chaos of it all and having to deal with all the villagers oncoming. So, but yeah, there was a few frustrating sections, but I imagine those will kind of fade away with time. Did you, Kelly, have any kind of lowlights that stuck out to you these first few playthroughs?
Yeah, I feel like the parry is a little bit out of place as far as like mechanics go for combat.
Okay.
I think it's not rewarding enough. Like I found myself like wanting the dodge roll from 3 where like you could become immune
Totally.
for like a very small amount of time and you change
Mm-hmm.
you like move a bit. That's all I
One of
want.
the
Like,
redeeming qualities of 3 Remake.
yeah, for sure. I think the parry leaves a lot just because when you parry, you're often just right back in the same scenario that you were in originally. Like I would
Mm-hmm.
get grabbed by bugs and then I would stab them or like parry out of the bug thing, but then there's like 6 other bugs already there
Yeah.
anyway, so it doesn't matter. So I'm getting swarmed constantly. So yeah, I think the dodge roll would have been good.
Yeah.
I think that I feel that almost feels kind of like that mechanic was carried over from like 2 and 3 of the unbreakable tackle like that the zombies do, which like force you to like use your knife durability and whatnot to get them off of you. That
Yeah,
I think instead of just bringing that over, I think an actual
Yeah.
proper, more fleshed out dodge and parry system would have been way better, especially with some of the attacks that are just so fast you don't have time to think. Where like a dodge would have like absolutely helped.
there have been
It's like
times where I get. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Scott.
I was just gonna say it's like they decided that they were gonna take the middle ground between 2 and 3, where 2 is just like
Right,
you have your one time use knife, and 3 you had like your dodge or your tackle, and they're just like
right,
instead of doing the good one, let's just meet them only halfway. So
right.
It's true. Yeah, like there were times where I'd get grabbed by like one of the bugs, stab it with the knife, use the durability, knife breaks or whatever, and then just get immediately re-grabbed by the same
Yeah,
bug.
right, yeah.
Like what was, I don't know. It
That
just feels
mechanic
really weird.
works better like in the setting of like 2 and 3 where the zombies are like slower and there's not as many of them, right? Not as many enemies around in general, but like 4 is just a different beast in its entirety because there's several times, like dozens of times throughout the game where you're just being swarmed with an absolute shit ton of enemies, so that
Yeah.
that mechanic just feels out of place, kind of like you said,
yeah.
Kelly.
Yeah.
And it also then carries over into like your whole purchasing plan as well. Like, you know, you're using up your knife durability the whole bunch. And then
Totally.
it's just like, well, if I want to have that immediate defense, should I get grabbed, then I'm going to have to spend money at the shop in order to get that
Hmm.
fixed up all the
Yeah,
time.
it's an
So,
infinite money sink that you're just kind of like always managing, which is fine, I guess. And you still have you have the armor that you're doing that with as
Hmm.
well, which is like a huge up. I think that's also
oh
good.
yeah,
The fact that you can do a damage reduction like flat, so that's
Totally.
nice. But yeah,
I kind of found in my playthrough that like the you get a ton of extra knives on top of your base one, like kind of in like the first half or like the first 2/3 of the game maybe, and then it like felt like there was like none in the back half of the game, and
yeah,
it felt like the game was giving you more health and just money and ammo instead, which like is appreciative. Like definitely need that ammo and health like towards the end with the harder enemies, but yeah, it was an interesting thing I noticed that like because like you do have the durability of your main knife or main 2 knives towards the end of the game, um, but then you don't have to be as reliant on them and you don't have to sink as much money in because you have those extra knives, which is nice. um,
hmm
yeah. What else? The story was fine. That was, I mean, it wasn't really something I was like super invested in. It was a very like kind of cookie cutter hard gruff soldier guy going to rescue the president's daughter type thing,
yeah,
right? The cult stuff was pretty cool, and I think I really liked the mission variety and the settings. The amount of variety in the settings was great. I loved the castle section apart from the catapult thing. I enjoyed that a lot. Um, yeah, Scott, did you have any particular, especially coming from, or I guess also tangentially, real quick, Kelly, did you play the original? I don't remember if you mentioned that
yeah.
in the
I
beginning.
did.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. Okay, question for both of you then, I guess. Setting wise and like overhaul wise, do you have a particular favorite location or mission setting that kind of stood out to you? Scott, you want to go first?
I mean, I always enjoy just kind of like the village where, you know, where it's not getting quite into the hardcore stuff yet, but you're still dealing with like all these messed up villagers.
Hmm.
And you know, kind of just that opening scenario where you're having to deal with, yeah, like this whole village.
Totally.
I feel like, yeah, like it has like probably one of like the strongest intros
For sure.
of this series, where it kind of really helps build up its own mystery a little bit, whereas kind of like with the other ones, it's just zombies,
standard
Umbrella.
zombie stuff. Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah,
Yeah. I as much trouble as I had, that first village section is very effective in setting the tone for the game, I would
yeah.
say. Another quick little change I heard about, apparently, I don't know if you guys picked up on it, but apparently the not the bell tower, but there's like a tower section that you can climb up with a ladder. Apparently in the original, the floor doesn't like fall out on you, and that
Oh
was like a
yeah,
good cheese
Oh,
strat. Apparently in the original, you could just
yeah.
pick off a bunch of villagers, but they
yeah.
changed it in the remake
Oh,
so
right.
that
Yeah, yeah,
the floor will fall out and you can't stick up there for very long, which is
yeah.
funny.
They with a lot of like locations and stuff, they did stay very faithful with a lot of it, but they
Hmm.
definitely did do a lot of those change ups where it's just like, oh hey, like I think a good example is like when you first start up that game and you go into like that hunter's lodge. They kind of made it a little bit more like Resident Evil 8 when you're exploring that first building, and like it's all
Oh, okay.
creepy and sinister and all those extra rooms and all that, whereas
Sure.
like in the original it's only 2 rooms that are in there. So yeah.
Gotcha.
Um, so
Kelly, did
definitely
you
adding.
have, sorry, finish your thoughts,
Oh,
Scott.
I was going to say, like they tried to add a little bit more of like the actual horror aspect into
Right.
RE4 remake, whereas like in the original one, it's just like it's a zombie action game. So
Right.
yeah,
Yeah. Well, and I mean the graphical overhaul definitely helps too, like in 2 and 3 as well, right? Like
yeah,
having that dynamic lighting and everything. The flashlight like sections are way more effective. Um,
oh yeah.
yeah, it definitely feels way more spooky. Kelly, did you have a particular mission or setting that you liked that stood out?
Yeah, I actually I really like what they've done with the castle. This is when I was
Hmm.
a kid and I first played Resident Evil. I had to stop playing at the hedge maze because I was too scared of like the dogs that would like jump and hurt me.
Yep, yep,
Um,
yep.
That's
yeah,
funny.
I really like how compact everything is now. Like it's not as like sprawling and insane as it used to be. Like
Hmm.
definitely they fixed a lot of the original like things that I was like, okay, I get to this part of the game and now I don't want to play anymore because it's really tough to get through. So
Right.
yeah, the castle's really good, and they definitely, yeah, like Scott was saying, they've definitely played it more straight. It is like survival horror, like more than goofy, like funny adventure with Leon and Ashley now.
Right.
So
Yeah,
I don't know.
The regenerator section is
Oh
a
yeah,
particular horror like standout. Like that gave some like Dead Space vibes too. Even though I know Dead Space came after RE4 originally, but
yeah,
uh, yeah, it reminded me a lot of that. That whole laboratory section was very creepy. The regenerators fucking suck though. I
yeah.
hate those guys so much.
Oh,
yeah.
they always have. If anything, even in the original game was like super scary and
Hmm.
more horror like. It was that section. So, you know,
Right.
it's good that they've carried that forward as well. So
Hmm.
yeah,
It's actually kind of funny. Like I think they're called Garradors, the blind guys. Actually
Oh yeah.
feel like quite easy. Like compared to how like they're introduced, it's a very horrific and like scary section. But then once you actually learn the like gameplay mechanic, like you literally can just stand in one place and you're pretty much fine the whole time. You can just kind of pick them off. It gets a little more hairy, like once you're in the cast or deeper into the castle, I should say, where there's like that big room where there's a bunch of cultists coming down while there's the two Garradors. But it feels like a bit more of a stark contrast compared to like the regenerators, where it's just way freaking harder to kill them.
yep,
Um, yeah, I also just wanted to say, speaking of like location and like art direction, not art direction specifically, but like just the whole setting of it all, I can see where Resident Evil 8 got a lot of its inspiration from 4. They feel very similar,
yeah,
Mhm.
in my opinion. Not in a bad way, but like you can definitely see where Village got its inspo,
yeah.
and just had that kind of little twist. Like there's a village section, there's like a castle section, right? Um, yeah, it's very interesting. Yeah, is there any other highlights or lowlights you guys wanted to point out before we move on?
I just want to mention again that like I really appreciate what they did for the characters. Like Krauser is just like a way better character in this game compared to the original.
Yeah.
This like the original, it's like it's so random that there's just this colonel guy trying to kill you all the time, and then
Yeah,
That's a bit more fleshed out in this.
yeah, it makes
Yeah.
sense now. Like okay, he's actually like he has some kind of motivations and like more.
Is
than just,
is the mission, if you can recall, Kelly, is the mission section with him longer in this one, or is it about this? Is he involved about the same amount?
It's
Do you
about
remember?
same, I think.
Interesting.
Scott, if you want to chime in there, I think it is about the same. You
They
get the,
kind
like,
of just
obstacle
use that
course
time a
and
little bit
fight.
more
Yeah,
effectively then.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I think
Yeah.
it's a better it's a better experience for sure. You have the same
it-
kind of like obstacle course, but
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Even like in the very opening, in the intro of the
Flashback
game,
sequence
when they show off that, oh hey, like Leon joined like
trained
this
with.
secret service, and he was
Yeah,
like,
you get a
he
flash
did
of
this
him.
training. So
Mhm.
which they didn't have that in the original game. So
Right. Gotcha.
and the
Apparent.
picture of Leon with the "I'm waiting for you" at the bottom, that's really funny. So Krauser's just carrying around this picture of Leon everywhere he goes, like one day,
As much
rookie.
work as that
Yeah.
sounds like they did, he still like just exudes that like 80s action hero villain.
yeah.
Like I got and even like 80s high school bully villain type as well. Like I
Yeah.
still haven't like you can bash me for this. I still haven't watched Back to the Future 2, but I got such
Damn.
big vibes of what is the guy's name?
Biff,
The
Biff Tannen.
Biff, yeah.
Yeah.
He's like Biff went to the military for sure. Also, Luis didn't play as big a part in the original, right? I think I heard that that his
Yeah.
sections and levels were more.
He's a lot more
experimental.
likable in this one. In the original, he's way more pervy and like I mean,
Oh.
I
Yeah.
don't know, it depends.
Right.
But
They kind of leave it as he's a ladies' man in this one, and
yeah,
that's
it's
it.
more like
That-
he's kind of just suave, but yeah, in the original, he's
Right.
like outwardly like, hey,
Yikes.
Yeah.
That's funny. Yeah, I liked that whole mine section and the two El Gigante, I think they're called. That boss battle was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Speaking
yeah,
of
it's
which,
way better now too.
oh really? Was it pretty
Yep.
frustrating in the
Yeah,
original?
the original is a little bit worse. Yeah,
Yeah, a little bit completely awful.
I think to go back on one of Kelly's earlier statements with just the boss battles just being so much better. In the original ones, there was a lot more QTE segments in it.
Yeah.
I was gonna
especially
say, yeah.
depending on which version you were playing. So it was a lot more of just like, okay, and now he's going to throw a boulder at you, so now do like a whole action sequence. So
Right.
I guess that's as well where like Leon feels like a bit of like a better character and more like an actual trained professional as opposed to being, an over the top 80s action hero. So
Mhm. I actually kind of had that feeling a couple times, like especially towards like the end of the boss battle sections where like it would play the cinematic. I was like ready and waiting with my controller. It's like most recently, obviously, the final boss battle. I was like, is there going to be a QTE? It feels like there's supposed to be a QTE right here.
yeah.
It's funny that kind of translated over a little bit.
Yeah.
Speaking of boss battles, do you guys have a favorite, even for like comparing the original to this one, or just from the remake in general? Kelly, do you have one that stands out at the moment?
Trying to think. I guess yeah, I still like the lake fish because there's no way to make that boss battle any easier. You just kind of have
Right.
to like learn the mechanic and like actually do well. Like, and it gets a little bit harder in the harder difficulties.
Oh,
Like he'll
yeah.
steer you more into like stuff.
Oh,
you
really?
actually have to like think about
Into
steering
debris,
the boat.
yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Now like it's really clear where your spears are gonna go. Like the original just has like a
Yes.
reticle, and you're just kind of like it's so
Yeah.
sensitive in the original that yeah.
Oh god.
Yeah.
They did a really good job with that one for sure.
That
Cool.
definitely is another one of like the mechanical upgrades, just of 20 years. Is that like you can just simply have like your crosshairs or like on the lake it just has like that little pool where it shows through it, whereas like yeah, when you were playing that game back in 480p, your laser sight and that was like really needed back then. So
Right.
Yeah.
I I really enjoyed the like kind of going back to getting Dead Space vibes. I really enjoyed the what is it called? I think Verdugo. I don't know if that's how you pronounce it, but the like it below the castle when Leon gets chucked down the well, and there's that underground laboratory and like the cryo lab. The Verdugo boss battle was pretty cool. I actually didn't defeat it. I just like ran out of there because like he like takes a lot of hits, it seems like, even after you've used all of the cryo stations on him. So
yeah,
that'll be a fun one to revisit and actually defeat him proper. But I really liked the vibe that one gave off. He's a really like scary boss battle. I think probably one of the most scary boss battles.
Yeah, for
Scott,
sure.
do you have a favorite boss at all? I also really liked Big Cheese, the whatever his name, Mr. Beard with the hat.
It was interesting because it felt like they took some cues from like 7 when like you're fighting Father, was it? Like in the garage and stuff.
Oh yeah. I thought you were talking about the film 7. I'm like,
no,
what?
no,
What are you talking about?
Resident Evil 7.
Yeah.
Village, not Village, just 7. Yeah, where
Biohazard, I
like
think
he
is called.
Yeah, where he's just this ever continuously mutating
Grotesque
creature
monster.
that just
Yeah. When
angry
that
at you.
when he changes, my mouth was like open. I'm like, oh my god, that is awful.
Yeah.
It's Jack from Resident Evil 7. That's
Jack.
He's in like the yellow, and he has boots, and he has the big like the scissors.
Yeah, the
Scissors
comically
things.
large shears.
Yeah.
That's funny.
But
yeah,
I don't know.
My least favorite boss battle was the clock tower one with, I can never remember his name off the top of my head, but like the pompous like Victorian dude with the wig and everything, or like
Salazar?
Salazar, yeah, I hated that boss battle.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's cheap. It feels really cheap.
He just never stops moving, so I never knew like how to approach him, and like it was pretty. It didn't take that many tries. I think I only I beat him on my second try or whatever. But yeah, that was frustrating for sure.
He has a lot of insta kill mechanics. So like he can grab you and like eat you. The blast of acid that just like will kill you. So
yeah,
it does feel cheap.
A lot of those attacks
kind of hiding all the time.
Yeah, totally. A lot of those attacks just feel like they warrant that, like, again, that like dodge and parry mechanic, whereas Leon he's just moving too slow. It was frustrating at times, but I digress. In terms of creator goal, I think we've expunged our highlight lowlight section. I think they pretty much nailed it on the head. They set out to make yet another fantastic remake of their stronger earlier Resident Evil games, because I know most people don't like the 5-6 era. I'm curious to know, this is a bit more tangential, but I'm curious to know the direction they go forward in terms of the remakes, if they're going to first revisit the first one, Resident Evil, and see if that one actually gets a proper modern upgrade. It did get a I don't know if it was just a remaster 5 or so years ago. Not
it's
5,
like a full remake.
more than that.
The original, it's the original remake. It is like, it stands the test of time. Like it's pretty good. Yeah, as far as like the original, it's like a good translation.
Would you say it maybe warrants just a remaster then? At that point,
I think they're all right. Not. I think if they remaster, that'd be fine.
I would think everything. A remaster, if anything, just to help bring it to more modern consoles.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking too.
Have that graphical like kind of consistency more than anything. Cool, interesting. Yeah, I think that one and the original RE4 I still want to actually visit, because like, especially because of the comparison of the remake and the original for 4, they sound very different. So that it would be still a experience that stands on its own.
Yeah.
So
I would be intrigued if if they did remaster the first one, if they do anything camera wise with it. Because even with the remake they did a couple of years ago, they still kept it to locked camera angles, much like in the very original game. Yeah. They like, I think, monkeyed around with like just a couple sections just to make it a little bit more user friendly on just more like as of then the modern hardware. But they still tried to keep it faithful with like, oh, you're in this room and you just have like this one fixed angle to look at. So yeah,
interesting. Very interesting.
So I'd be interested to see if they change it up more, like 2 or 3 or now 4 remake with giving you a much more free floating camera.
Right. But yeah, I think they succeeded on this remake. They knocked it out of the park. It's already getting like Game of the Year discussions around it.
It's gonna hold on to that all the way until what is it? May?
Zelda.
Yeah.
It's pretty early. We don't know if
as far as like really the first quarter.
Yeah.
If that, and I mean, there also have been like 3. I mean, Metroid Prime was a remaster, so that doesn't quite. It's not the same level of like Dead Space or RE4 for sure, but like there's already been 3 games that are like reiterations of originals this year, which is pretty funny. So maybe in terms of that, at the very least, it's probably the strongest contender. But yeah, I think they knocked it out of the park. I hope to see them do, well, as I was saying with my tangent, I'm curious to see if they do anything with the first Resident Evil, or if they try and improve 5 and 6 potentially, maybe incorporate more horror into it potentially, or just try and rework it.
That would be quite the uphill battle for them though, because 5 and 6 were really made to be action experiences and not really like zombie horror. So, but
not battling as many creatures in those games.
We entered like the Gears of War era of like Xbox 360 games with like insane bloom and everything, and they were like, we can do that, and they just made Resident Evil that, and it didn't really translate very well.
Yikes.
Yeah, it's a lot of the gripes that I have with Resident Evil. Those 2 games are like the pinnacle of those problems. So
yeah.
It would be really interesting though if they actually just co-opted the 5 and 6 of it all, and that's it, and then just made entirely new, like an entirely new direction for the story with like remakes. I guess you wouldn't. I mean, you could barely even call them remakes then at that point if they just made like brand new games.
Restart over.
Yeah, redo Resident Evil redo. There we go. I'm assuming we all. So Scott, you actually like played it on a friend's PS5, but you ended up getting a copy for yourself. You got it for PS5 as well, I'm assuming.
Xbox. Yeah.
Oh, Xbox. Okay, right.
Yeah,
it is a multi-platform.
Outside of PC. So.
And then Kelly, what did you play on?
PC, but I used a PS5 controller on PC.
Oh, okay.
I switched between keyboard and mouse. Keyboard and mouse makes aiming insanely good. Like it like makes the game way too easy in my opinion.
Interesting.
So I was using controller. I like navigating the game with a controller more.
Right. I also feel like the case organizing might be easier on a keyboard and mouse almost.
Oh, for sure.
Other than, like obviously auto sort.
Just dragging the mouse all over. Like,
You
almost don't need the auto sort. You're just fucking fun. Yeah.
Totally. Another little like minor thing I appreciated. I don't know if this was a change at all from the original, but I really appreciated the treasure having its own inventory and not being in the case. That just made for like, that would have been a huge headache on top of everything else, but something I just appreciated.
Yeah, no, that's thankfully always been that way. In the original, it was like its own separate thing. So, but I guess touching back on an earlier point with, I don't know if this was more highlight, low light, or just
changing throw it in there.
But definitely adding on the merchant side quests for spinels, because in the original game those were just hidden collectibles that you just had to find throughout, and like there were no like side quests to do that.
Well, and I thought I heard as well that you only sold the spindles for money, right? And you didn't actually use them to trade for things. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's true.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
I liked having that little option as well.
Yeah, them redesigning it so that like you could then get either gun upgrades or other treasures or just missables was it was an interesting change.
Yeah. It seems like you have to do a lot of digging, or I guess maybe not so much digging, but you definitely have to do all the side quests and stuff, and you just have to be really economical with what you spend your spindles on, because there's at least 2 of those what are they called, exclusive upgrades that you can buy, at least like through the first playthrough or whatever. But the second one's like 40, and I think by the end of the game I was at like 25, 30 maybe. So maybe I just missed a couple like side quests or here and there, or what. But I was only able to do one exclusive upgrade, unfortunately. So
those
what else?
tickets are you can it's just like a separate system. So like if you upgrade your weapon fully with all of the upgrades maxed out, you get the option of either using the ticket or the actual money. So yeah, it's like you get the 2, and it's kind of like a free thing.
That's
it
what that is.
Yeah.
Okay, I was very confused when that happened, because I had the ticket, the first one, when I went to upgrade my shotgun, and it said the ticket, and then 100,000 next to it or whatever, and I thought you had to have both.
No,
so I like sold a bunch of stuff to get 100,000, and then I used the ticket on it, and I still had my money. I'm like, wait, what?
No.
Luckily, it wasn't. I didn't like sell any prized possessions or anything, so I lucked out that way. But that's funny.
On New Game, I sold all my weapons and items for the infinite rocket launcher, so I was just like,
that's all I need. Nice,
got it.
Yep,
yeah,
that's awesome.
The 1.6 mil or whatever count. Yeah.
So kind of circling back to like paying and everything and play platform. It's $80, I think, Canadian, without tax. And I thought it was worth it, especially at the like just the level of replay value it has, especially compared to like the predecessors 2 and 3. I definitely think it warrants that if you're kind of going by $1 per hour pay rate, I guess, which is a little ridiculous when you think about it with some games. But I definitely think you'll get your money's worth on that end. It is a full price game, so like you are like I think it is worth that money, because you'll get a lot of like, especially if you're someone who like replays a game regularly and isn't just like a one and done type thing, then this definitely is the game for you. There's just so much content in the game for you to enjoy and experience. I don't know if you Scott or Kelly wanted to weigh in at all on that.
I mean, I definitely got a much better $80 value out of this than compared to initial price for RE3, and just with like how short that was.
Totally.
I paid full price for RE3. Regret, man.
Yeah. I think I waited and got RE3 like on a sale. I just initially played it with friends, but definitely for like just having a copy just on my shelf, it's just like, that was worth it. It's $80 there. So
for sure. Well, and it's one of those few and far between games in this day and age of like not requiring online or anything, right? So like, especially if you have that disc, it's like pop it in and go, baby. Like there's no strings attached with that one.
I was still getting the Mercenaries mode on April 7th, so there's still more content coming, and probably DLC, because there's another extra mode that was included with RE4 Original. It's like a separate,
really?
You play as Ada through her like part of the game. Yeah, so
there we go. Yeah, I think that's something that definitely makes sense with that game. That would be very fun to revisit. That would be fun to look forward to. I also picked up RE3 on a sale, so I definitely didn't take as big a hit. I think I bought it for like $12, so I was like, okay, it's it's definitely nowhere near as long, but it's all right.
It's okay. I made worse mistakes.
I've spent more on less, so awesome. Well, I mean, based on our past 55 minutes, I would say we probably recommend it to most people. If you really enjoyed the first 2 remakes, and if you enjoyed the original. I think this is a fantastic game, well worth your $80, and it'll definitely tide you over until some of the other big releases later in the year. At least a month until like Zelda comes out if you're part of that crowd.
Yep.
Zelda nuts and bolts.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a recommendation from us. And yeah, that's where we're going to call it for this NoScore review show. Scott, Kelly, thank you so much for joining me this episode. Scott, do you have any plugs and or recommendations?
I mean, you can just find me anywhere the moment you type in Scoptimus7. Primarily, you'll find either my YouTube channel or my Twitch, which, I mean, that has been kind of quiet for a while, but I might have some...
Do you archive your streams, or is that like an automatic thing on Twitch?
Yes, they are archived to YouTube, so you
there
can
you go. At the very least, you can go check those out.
Yeah. As for recommendations, if you're looking for a good JRPG to also consume all your time, try out Octopath Traveler 2. It has wonderful characters, very good things, wonderful stories. Might not be for every RPG player out there, but if you are somebody who can really stick with a game, highly rewarding.
Another worthy investment of the $80, I've heard.
Or I think it's 80, right? If you're an idiot like me. So on the collectors. So yeah.
Right. Awesome. Kelly, do you have any plugs and or recommendations?
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at Tochigawa, or on Twitch at Tochigawa, or YouTube also that. I stream at 3 a.m. randomly, usually to test like weird equipment
hour
using. So Twitter, I just retweet like market news, so that'll be fun if you'd like that.
If you're into business and stocks,
that's pretty much all I do. But yeah, other than that, that's it.
Cool. You can find me all over the internet at NoScore or at NoScore Reviews. You can stay tuned to wherever you're listening to or watching this episode of the NoScore Review Show. I just did a review on John Wick Chapter 4, where I had nothing but good things to say about that film.
You guys could have honestly talked about that movie for another hour, I feel like.
Probably, yeah. Easy. Yeah. We didn't even have all the guests on that we were supposed to, so it definitely could have gone for longer. But yeah, go check that out. We also have, in the kind of video game vein, a little bit, tangentially, kind of, NoScore review show for the Mario movie will be coming up very soon. So be sure to check that out when the time comes. I'm very excited to see that. And Scott is going to be on that show as well. He's already locked in for that one. But yeah, if you don't have the means to play Resident Evil 4 Remake, but you still want to see what all the fuss is about, you can go check out my other YouTube channel at NoScore Plays, where I did a full 16-episode playthrough of the game. As of the time of this recording, not all of it has been uploaded. It's doing one a day. So there's still episodes coming out for that. But if you want to go check that out, then by all means do so. I'm also doing more indie game stuff. I'm going to be kind of honing in on the indie game side for my Let's Play channel. But I still will probably be doing the occasional big AAA game every now and then. I intend to do at least a first hour impression of Star Wars Jedi Survivor when that comes out later in April, at the end of April, basically. So be sure to stay tuned for that stuff. Otherwise, thank you again so much for listening and watching this episode of the NoScore Review Show. Kelly, Scott, once more, thanks again for joining me.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, we'll see you on the next review. Bye-bye.